The idea behind this podcast actually came from a conversation with my wife. So we were at dinner a few weeks ago and we started having a conversation about what each of our signature strengths were. And she told me, she said, I think one of your superpowers is execution and the ability to get stuff done. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. I am going to share with you 3 keys that help me get shit done. And I'll talk about how I've developed these skills, why I think that I did develop them, and we'll share some of those details so that you can apply some of those tactics if you feel this is an area of your life where you would like to improve. Who am I and why am I sharing this with you? My name is Ryan Rice. I run a real estate investment business. This is my 4th year in business. I spent over a decade in Fortune 30, where it was very important to get shit done. I was in retail, and we always had to do a lot with very few resources, and it was a lot of that career that taught me how to get stuff done. So I think I can share this from that frame and share it in a way that will be helpful for you. The idea behind this podcast actually came from a conversation with my wife. So we were at dinner a few weeks ago and we started having a conversation about what each of our signature strengths were. And she told me, she said, I think one of your superpowers is execution and the ability to get stuff done. And I would agree with her. I think that's a skill set that I've developed over my decade plus retail career. And it's something that I certainly use to my benefit. The 3 keys that I'm going to share with you to get shit done is 1, your calendar, because this is how you manage your attention. 2, delegation, because this is how you leverage other people in order to get stuff done. And 3, your environment, because this is how you construct the environment around you. And I'm talking about your physical environment in order to get stuff done. First, let's dive into your calendar. And I want to tell a quick story as to the reason why I think I developed this as a strength of mine. When I was in my 20s, I ran an exterior painting business, and I did that for 2 summers. And one thing that I learned very early on in running this business, I had a mentor who made me take a physical calendar and block every 15 minutes of every single day of my time, from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. And so I would even, block the 15 minutes, wake up, shower, even all of the personal things. I would have that time allocated on my calendar. And doing this activity for essentially 2 years drastically helped me understand how to manage my attention. One thing specifically I remember it helping me with is when I ran that exterior painting business, how I got all of my business. And each year we did over $40,000 in exterior painting sales. How I got that business is by knocking on doors. Every single job that I got, I knocked on strangers' doors. And if it wasn't for planning out my calendar every 15 minutes, I don't know that I would have allocated the proper time to knock on doors, because it was something that in the moment I didn't enjoy doing. And so that was something that just allocating every 15 minutes of my calendar helped ensure that I do, is helped allocate my time to do the things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I had the time blocked in my calendar. And it was like, what else am I going to do? I'm out on the street. This is the time I have blocked in my calendar. I got to report back to my mentor. I guess I better do it. So it helped in that fashion. The second thing that this activity helped me do is just to generally have a good understanding of how long things take. And I think I garnered this skill because mapping every 15 minutes of my calendar for 2 straight years, it's like you figure out how long things take and they start to become intuitive, right? So when I first started my calendar, I had to ask myself, okay, how long would this take? Block calendar. How long would this take? Block calendar. Then the following week when I would do this activity, I would have the same things. And I would, how long would this take? Oh, well, based on my learnings and doing this last week, I need to adjust how long this will actually take. And so let me, ensure that I input the appropriate amount of time on the calendar. And every new week was an iteration of that. And over time, it was like I started to learn how long things actually take. And I think one reason why this is so useful for me now is because when I have projects that I want to complete or when I have things that I want to do, I just kind of intuitively understand how long that they're going to take. And a quick side note, I do not track every 15 minutes of my calendar now. I think what doing so for 2 years taught me is I developed those skills and I intuitively learned some of the things that I needed to learn about my attention management by doing it for 2 years. But again, it gave me this intuitiveness of knowing how long things would take. And I put this to use because I very rarely start projects that I can't finish. That's something that I notice. If there's something that I want or I need to get done, and I know I have a certain amount of time allocated in order to do it, I don't ever start something if I don't have time to finish it. And what that helps make sure that happens in my life is I very rarely have 10 half-done projects, or I actually never get into a situation. I never put myself into a situation where I have multiple half-done projects that are going on at the same time. And it just helps me stay organized. What helped manage my attention, again, doing this 15-minute block on my calendar for 2 straight years, it helps ensure that when I start something, I finish it, because I learned how long things take and I don't start something when I can't finish it. And so now what I do is if I have a project or I have a thing that I need to complete, I start it and I finish it and then I move on to the next thing. And I think that just helps get stuff done, right? Like I don't ever put myself in a situation where I have so many things that are undone and then there's just this disorganized mess of everything that needs to happen. And I think this is very useful for tactical tasks, right? If there is something that's more creative, I do think sometimes there's value in me stopping in the middle of something creative and then coming back to it. So for example, let's say I'm writing or I'm making content or I am in a little bit more of a creative mode. I don't think that this tactic is as useful for creative tasks, but if it's, again, just something more tactical and execution based, I have found this to be very useful. And I think zooming out, what that task taught me is just how to keep an organized calendar. While I don't map out my calendar every 15 minutes today, I do typically have a very organized calendar. I keep one in my personal life and I keep one in my work life. And it just helps me manage my attention. It helps ensure that I'm spending my time and attention where it is that I need to. The second key to getting shit done is delegation, leveraging other people's time in order to get stuff done. And where I learned this is at Target running stores. For those of you that are in retail or have retail experience, you know that retail is all about having so much to do with very, very minimal resources. And if you're not in retail and that doesn't resonate, one thing that was super common at Target stores and as a store manager, what I had to do every single week is we got a certain amount of payroll hours and we knew we had a whole bunch of stuff to do and we had to figure out how to get a whole bunch of stuff done with very few resources. And so you have to learn how to delegate because obviously as a store manager, the biggest store that I ran had 300 people that worked at the store, and we always had to ensure that all 300 people were always doing something at all times, or else we weren't going to get done what it was that we needed to get done. And running Target stores for over a decade, this was not something when I first started that I was just naturally super good at. I learned over a decade of having to get a lot of stuff done with very few resources. If you don't learn how to delegate, if you don't learn how to leverage other people's time, then you're just not going to run a good Target store. So my back was against a wall, essentially. I had to learn how to do it well, and doing so for over a decade, you essentially learn how to master that skill set. And there was a book I read early in my career and my very first boss at Target suggested this book. I think it's called 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey or something. And if you're in a role where you have a lot to do and you have very few resources to get it done and you have a team, that could be an effective book for you to read. It certainly helped me. But essentially, I'm always asking myself, am I the person that needs to do this, or is there someone else who can do it? And if you personally don't need to do something, then it can be a lot more beneficial to find someone else to do it. And I'll tell you a couple silly examples, even how I use this in my personal life. If my wife and I are in the kitchen together and I'm doing the dishes and we have an island, right? If I'm on one side of the island and she's on the other side for something, and I'm taking stuff out of the dishwasher, and where stuff needs to get put away is where my wife is, close by. If we're having a conversation, I'll just take it out and, like, without even thinking, I'll do this intuitively. I'll just hand her the things, or, hey, can you do this? Or can you get me this if you're on that side of the island. Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. Not only do I use this skill in my professional life, obviously in my business, but it's something that I don't intentionally or consciously think about. I just naturally, if there are other people around and they can help execute a job in a more efficient or more in a quicker fashion, then I will certainly take advantage of that. And I think that's just a culmination of doing that. Learning delegation over a period of a decade plus helped me refine that skill. And so for you, even if you're early on in your career, even if you're an entrepreneur and you just started your business and you're the only person in your business, I think how you can practice this is just always asking yourself, is this something that I need to do, or is there a way that I can have somebody else do this? And I think it's especially important when you're an entrepreneur. A mind hack that you can do, for example, is apply some sort of monetary value on you spending your time, right? You need to make sure that you're spending your time on the highest ROI activity. And if you're not spending your time on the activities that are going to return you the most amount of money in the fewest amount of time, or let's say, for some reason you decide that your time is worth $100 an hour. Well, if there are other tasks out there that can be done for the skill is worth $15 an hour, $20 an hour, well, one thing that's going to help you in your business is figure out how you can hire out those skills, how you can get somebody else to do those things for that price, because you know that you spending your own personal time on that activity is going to return you something that is going to earn you $100 an hour. So anything less than that is not going to be worth your time doing, and you have to figure out how you can leverage someone else's time in order to get that stuff done. And I'll give you a quick example, one from when I was with Target and one in my current business. At Target, I constantly had to make sure that I was always divvying out tasks and having other people do them. Now, granted, I had 300 people that were there. Okay, in any given day, maybe there were 50 to 100 people working in a Target store. And I always had to make sure that those 50 to 100 people were constantly working on the tasks that I decided were most critical. And because if there were tasks that were more, brute force related or just labor related, then I knew that wasn't going to be the best use of my time. I, as a store manager, had to work on strategy. I had to work on hiring. I had to work on the development of my team so that they could lead their team effectively. We had to plan out big store moves. And if I wasn't spending my time on some of the big picture stuff, then there's no way I could get everything else done. In my current business, one way that I use this, or an example of how I've applied this concept, is the very first person that I hired in my real estate business was my assistant. And I knew that if I wanted to focus my time on revenue generating activities, I had to find a way to get some of the paperwork and some of that type of stuff allocated so that somebody else could do it. And oh my gosh, was that tremendously helpful. Anytime I need a wire sent, anytime I need paperwork, anytime I need contracts written up, anytime I need to manage my calendar, anytime I need to schedule travel, I have all of the stuff taken care of that I can have an assistant help with. And that helps me focus on putting out offers, talking with sellers, leading my sales team. It helps me move the business forward. And hiring that assistant as my first hire, I think was a really good example of I developed this delegation skill set over the previous 10 years, and I knew how important it was that I get those tasks taken care of so that I could focus all my time and attention on the tasks that were going to return me the highest amount of leverage. The third key that helps me just get shit done is my environment. I surround my environment, and I'm talking about my physical environment, to ensure that I maximize efficiency. And here's what I mean. And I learned this from Target, by the way, because again, having so much to do with so few resources, you learn to set up your physical environment to maximize how much stuff you're able to get done. And when I do that for, again, literally 10 years in a row, you figure some stuff out. So let me give you a silly example. I very rarely do things that make me retrace my steps. And adding these things up exponentially, I think maximizes my efficiency, which in turn maximizes my ability to get stuff done. And the silly example is if I have shoes on and where those shoes are stored is upstairs, and for some reason I take my shoes off downstairs, I will take them off and I will put them in the physical and visible track so that next time I go upstairs, I get a visual cue and they're essentially in the way and they remind me to take them upstairs. I'll then take them upstairs the next time I go upstairs and I'll put them away. I don't take them off, walk upstairs, put them away, come back downstairs and continue doing my thing. And maybe a lot of you do this. Maybe it's more out of laziness than anything, but I think that's an actual strength of being lazy, is that you have to set up your environment in a way to get the most amount of stuff done with the least amount of effort. And that's a very small example is how I maximize my environment to maximize my efficiency. And so another example, let's say that you want to go to the gym in the morning and it's a new habit that you're trying to build and you haven't been able to figure out how to do it. Well, one thing that you could do to maximize your environment or increase the probability that you will execute on that task is the night before, you get all your clothes out, including your shoes. You can put them out somewhere, and then whatever your alarm is, you set on top of your clothes, and you make sure that your alarm is far enough away so that you have to get out of bed to turn your alarm off, and then you get out of bed and you walk over and there are your gym clothes and your gym shoes. You turn off your alarm, you can just put them on. Now you have your stuff on and you have increased the probability that you're actually going to make it to the gym if it's a new habit that you're trying to start, because you've already done all of that. And why would you put your gym clothes and your gym shoes on and then not just finish the task? That's, I think, an example of maximizing your environment in order to get stuff done. And so how you can apply this is, I think, constantly thinking about, okay, how can I set up my environment in order to get X done? If I have a task and I know that I need to do it, or especially if it's a habitual task, how can I set up my environment that is going to be conducive to executing on that habitual task? And I'll give you another really small example of how I've applied this recently. When I first started making podcast content, I knew that the best way to ensure I build a new habit of creating content is to set up my environment. So if I want to record, I can get into my office and I can literally open a screen and press a button and be ready to record in an instant. So I have my mic set up in a specific area. I have my office set up in a way that literally the time it takes for me to enter my office and get a podcast ready to record, that it's literally no time. And that helped me habituate this new activity that I wanted to start. Because if for example, I needed some sort of 5-minute setup period every time I wanted to record content. 5 minutes may not seem like a long time, but I guarantee you it would have prevented me from getting into this new habit, because that's kind of annoying to take 5 minutes every single time I need to produce content. And so I think this environment key, setting up your environment, is especially important if you're trying to build a new habit. The more that you can minimize the amount of friction that it takes for you to build a new habit, the higher the probability of you actually following through on that habit. So there you have it. 3 keys that have really helped me learn how to get stuff done. And I'll recap them. First is your calendar, your time and attention. Learn how to manage your attention. And if this is something that you're struggling with and you've tried other things and they're not working, I would encourage you to try blocking out every 15 minutes of your calendar and doing so for an extended period of time. You know, when you do this, it's not something that you need to think that you're going to do forever. Just keep in the back of your mind that you're just trying to learn a new skill and commit to doing it for an extended period of time. Maybe start with 30 days or maybe start with a week, right? Just try doing it for a week and then try doing it for another week. See if you can build 30 days in a row of doing this. And I think you'll be surprised at what you learn in this activity. Number 2 is delegation. Learn how to leverage other people in order to get stuff done. And this is super important, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you need to be spending your time and your attention on the highest leverage activity, the activities that are going to earn you the most amount of money. So learning how to delegate and get other people to do things is very, very important. And then 3, your environment. And again, especially important if you're trying to build a new habit, how you construct your environment may very much impact your ability to do and execute this new habit for an extended period of time. Because if there is friction, it is going to minimize the probability that you actually continue this habit, which is going to affect how you're able to get stuff done. And the second benefit to constructing your environment to getting stuff done is you maximize your efficiency. If your environment is set up to get a whole bunch of stuff done, then what do you know? You can increase the amount of stuff that you get done. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. If it was, would truly appreciate it if you share this with someone else and you think that may be helpful for them. That is the best way that you can give me feedback that you're enjoying this content. So really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much for your attention, and I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.